Good evening. Welcome to the August 24th meeting of the Oxford School Committee. Tonight, we have a pretty good agenda, in fact. We're waiting on Lori Kelly, our town clerk, who will be retiring, and we have a dedication for her this evening. We'll proceed with our beginning of our meeting, minutes of the meeting from August 5th. We're going to have a chance to read them and entertain a motion to approve the minutes of August the 5th, if there's not any changes.
I'll make the motion to approve as they are.
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Approved by a 5-0 vote. Next, under old business, we have health and safety monitor positions. We do have a description in here, and I'll send it to Dr. Nash to, just to rebrief the committee.
Yes, I think at the last meeting, the committee will remember you approved the basic job description, but we were going to come back to you with two things. One, somewhat of an overview of what a day might look like. And then secondly, a recommendation for the number of positions that we would need. So I can provide that to you in speaking with the building principals and for them to look at their logistics in their buildings. The recommendation is as follows: 5 at Chafee, 6 at Barton, 6 at middle school, and 5 at the high school, for a total of 22. The funding stream would be either the ESSER or the CARES. It will probably be the ESSER money because those monies have a longer life expectancy, whereas the CARES money needs to be expended by December 31st. So any positions for salary that would carry beyond the 31st of December, we would not be able to fund. We'd be able to fund half a year. So it would be half a year out of CARES and the rest out of ESSER. But the funding mechanism would come from either one of those two sources.
You know, Dr. Nash, do we currently have those funds available?
Yes, both are available. We've actually applied for ESSER, but we're also applying for CARES first because those monies have to be spent down, and then we'll go in and amend them as we probably will have to with both of them.
Okay, I'll
So-
clarify my question. Do we have money in hand?
Yes, we do.
So not on speculation?
Right,
For
yes.
that.
For both of those funding mechanisms are there. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
Mr. Fracchiola?
Why is our biggest building in the district only requesting 5?
That's a good question. I'm assuming based on his numbers and of staffing that he does have staff assigned to either lunch or bathroom duties. So I'm assuming that as part of their regular duties, maybe they're picking up some of that. Also looking at, Dave, what could be in a hybrid situation, the total number of students based on request could be as little as 200 students in a building on a hybrid week. So roughly 40 per grade.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Corey?
Dr. Nash, do we know the total cost for the 22?
I'm going to, depending on their start date, in other words, when we move into hybrid, there's not a need to obviously have them as long as we're in remote. I think, if my initial recollection, somewhere between 150 to 175. I am pretty sure, I wish Justin were here, that was based on 22. I know it was based on low 20s. I'm just not exactly sure. So somewhere in that ballpark. And again, depending on the start date, it could be a little bit less or a little bit, obviously the same. Again, the funding mechanism are coming from those grants. We've been fortunate that we've been able to use some of the town monies for some of the PPE, which is where we've really spent initial funding for things related to COVID. So we've not dipped into that at this point in time, if I remember correctly.
And was there discussion about, I guess the part that's kind of setting me back a little bit is the bathroom monitors. what does that look like? What is their responsibility? And if they're not sitting in the bathroom, which I wouldn't recommend,
No, not at all.
are they useful at all?
I think, well, it's one person doing multiple duties, as part of their day, whether it's, depending on the school, as you know, whether it's, recess in some buildings, or it's lunch duty, or it's making sure that the flow in the bathroom isn't more than what we would want, and potentially also going in, we had talked with custodians about what minor types of cleaning could they undertake, what would make sense. Whereas a custodian may not be around, somewhere else in the building, could the person who's in this capacity go in after the elementary students when they're done and just wipe off those areas? So we're working out those details, simply because contractual language is that we can't have someone else assigned to duties that belong to a custodian, but I think we might be able to work through that. So I could see them doing some of that also, yeah.
I think part of that too, Corey, is reading through these, the bathroom monitors, is recording the students in and out.
Mhm.
So we have a record of who's in the hallway, how often they're in the hallway, and, we do have habitual hallway wanderers, as any school would have. Additionally, and so the students tend to congregate in the restrooms. So keep them separated and
Some
get back to
levels
class.
they do, don't they?
Yeah, that's pretty universal. That may happen.
They do.
Just keep them moving and keep them separated and get them right back to class. Yes, Ms. Forbes.
Quick question, thank you.
We had bathroom monitors at the high school previously.
We did?
We did.
Okay.
I think it,
Have they been removed? Was that a temporary thing? And it was just a
Never
flow
had them.
issue.
We've never had them.
I thought during a time of high vandalism, we
I think it
had,
was teachers.
I think it was
Oh, teachers were doing it.
so
I knew
was
somebody
It was
was.
a duty, I know, when
Okay.
I had the discussion with Dave, what duties or responsibilities were assigned to teachers.
Okay.
There were two,
okay.
lunch and bathroom. Those were the
Gotcha.
two bathroom duties, so.
I knew that we had
I would
something.
assume that
Thank
that's
you.
what you probably are thinking of.
Okay.
Mrs. Griffin.
I know I brought this point up before, and I guess one thing that I question is what happens if we go to remote as far as unemployment? What's the potential cost that will incur?
I can't estimate what the potential cost would be for unemployment. Would they be eligible? They're 19.5 hours, so there are no benefits, but anyone is eligible for unemployment, is my understanding. So they certainly would be. Any position that you hire or add that's COVID related is going to be a position that ultimately at the end of a school year, if they're here for a full year, even if they're not, would be eligible on the town side for unemployment. So any of these, from bus monitors, who, if you hire them through the bus company, then the eligibility falls back to them. If we hire them at a lower rate, then we own that, but then the town potentially owns the unemployment also.
And a follow-up question, do we talk to the teachers union about taking this on as a a different role and kind of negotiate with the union to pay faculty to do some extra duties or to think creatively? Because in that case, if we went to unemployment, I would think it would be different because they're already.
Well, it'd be how to do some of these duties when they're already teaching. That would be the problem you've had. You certainly could look at that at the end of a class period, but the recommendation with respect to bathrooms is really not to have students use bathrooms between those breaks, because you then therefore don't have a real way of keeping a log when they're signing out of the classroom, whereas the teacher can have you sign out. So they're really recommending that you do what most teachers probably don't like, which is to have you sign out and leave your classroom and come back, because then you have a log for purposes of tracing. So I don't know how we could find, if you're talking about bathroom supervision, I think that that's something that I don't know that we would have staff that would be available to do that.
I guess my follow-up question would be to have that discussion with the administration to see if it's a possibility. I mean, it's a very big investment, potentially at $175,000. I really wish it would go somewhere else. I mean, I know other districts are not entertaining this, and so.
Well, we're also looking at more than just, bathrooms, and that we're looking at, the whole concept of how do we ensure that students wear their masks, that they obviously remain as much as possible 6 feet. When they come in the morning, you'd have to really renegotiate starting hours, for example. If you had teachers in your district who had to be in your district for a half hour, 20 minutes, our buses start to arrive at the high school 20 sometimes to 25 minutes before. Well, currently our teachers don't need to be in buildings, so there'd be a cost there that would probably equal to some degree, or at least complement of the amount that you'd be spending on potentially on hiring in staff at this level, if you will, at a lower salary, hourly rate compared to what you'd be paying staff, I would think, for any type of stipend.
Corey, you had a question?
Good.
No,
Still
no,
going? Good.
I can wait.
Okay. So, I guess I'm stuck on monitoring the bathrooms, but I'm just looking at the schedule for the Barton Elementary staff members and seeing that there's a person who's sitting in front of 2 bathrooms, another person who's sitting in front of one, another person who's sitting in front of one. I wonder if, at the very least, there's an opportunity to narrow that down to one person who rotates, does a walking rotation around the building to make sure, like Dan said, there's not
Sure.
a lot of kids congregating in there, but maybe not just sitting there for over 2 hours outside the bathroom.
Yeah, I certainly think there is. I mean, this is a sample. I think the biggest challenge is covering of lunch. So, how to make sure that happens safely in the classroom, monitored. And so I think that's the biggest, what I see is your teachers having a duty-free lunch. So when you have that, then you need to make sure that you have some availability of someone to monitor that. And that's where I see probably the biggest challenge with these positions is trying to, as well as the before and arrival and dismissal piece of it, where you've got a lot of flow. And at the elementary level, probably recess. The addition, because these would take the place of what we typically at both elementary schools have recess and lunch aides, lunch monitors combined. So
those would no longer be-
exist. Yes.
How many of those were in each building?
Oh, you had to ask.
Sorry.
There were 2 per building.
I think at Barton they had more than, I think Barton had 4 or 5, but they were for a block of maybe 3 hours,
Just
maybe
give it
2 hours
lunch recess.
midday come in. So this may be a little bit more intriguing for people to apply for a part-time position.
Any other comment?
Yeah, just real quick, so did these people get offered this, so their jobs have been eliminated as well?
Their positions are year to year anyway, so they would certainly apply and may have been. I know we, have posted this as anticipated to see what we get. So they may very well have applied for it, and I know that some of the principals may have talked with them about that.
Mrs. Forbes?
Just one question for clarification for people at home. I did have somebody who is aware of this job who is a substitute, and she was wondering if, because this is part-time, if she can double dip and work as a sub on the days that she is not.
Sure. There's no reason why you always need subs. If the
Okay.
hours are such that some people do extended, it can't exceed more than 19.5 in those number of days that they're working, so.
In that capacity, but then what if they were subbing? Would that be considered pushing them into a full-timer because it's 2 different jobs? Does that not?
Well, the question would be if they're working every day, they wouldn't be able to sub.
Oh, I think they had talked to her about a couple days a
Yeah,
week.
it
but
could be
that's-
that then if they're doing less, then obviously on those other days, the person could substitute. and be a
Even if it
substitute.
puts them over the 19.5 for the week?
I believe it's 2 separate positions, but I would I'd have to check and ask,
Okay.
our personnel department, whether combined that makes a difference. So I really don't have an answer for you September on
All right.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel I don't know, I feel like we had staff who could do this work, at least in the 2 elementary buildings, so I'm not sure why we're not engaging them or having them be part of this, so that the number might be able to come down a little bit. I do agree with.
We just have to increase their hours, Dave. They may have very well applied. Some people, however, don't want to work a full week. I believe, I don't know each building and their staff. I know it was always hard when we were looking in some of my districts to find someone to come in that midday hours. No one ever wanted those.
Right.
But They certainly have an opportunity to apply and work more hours. It could very well be that they have retirement issues, a lot of them, and may not be able to go over a certain amount, but I don't see any reason why they couldn't apply.
All right, and we're breaking these 6 people down into one shift and then another shift essentially, correct? So really, is there a little bit of an overlap? Is that what I'm seeing?
I think principals have kind of thought of their schedules and what their needs might be during strategic times
Right.
during the day. So
So-
that's why, while it's 19.5, they can't go over, it might look a little different in each building.
Yeah, it looks like in each building
Yeah.
there's some overlap.
Right.
So there won't be necessarily 6 people in all the time.
That's
but
right, exactly,
combination.
right.
All right, and did I hear correctly that probably their primary role is going to be covering teachers for their contractual lunch, is that correct?
Obviously, we have no one who's gonna be able to do that and provide lunch free, obviously a lunch free time for teachers. So that's a major challenge to how to do that. That's why a lot of districts have simply dismissed and given a lunch to go, because they recognize that they have a contract that may say that teachers have to have a duty-free lunch, and therefore, they're not able to do that, so they cover themselves by giving a lunch and sending students off to do remote learning for the rest of the day. So, yeah, but the answer is yes.
And did we look into using our cafeterias at all?
We did. I think there was a discussion about that, and based on numbers and needs, we felt it was a little bit safer to do it in classrooms as opposed to the cafeteria, and what we would have what the needs were to make it happen.
Thank you.
Okay, September.
Last question for me on the lunch. What did we decide to do about the students with the severe allergies?
Those students would go to the cafeteria.
Okay,
So
that's what I
yes,
thought we
that's
talked
one of the
about.
reasons why I wanted to make sure, yes.
Great, thank you.
Mrs. Griffin?
What are the other things that are prohibiting students to going into the cafeteria?
Number of lunches we'd have to run to make it happen, to give the space. The fact that you have round tables in some areas, so you can't fit but one student with plexiglass. The fact that you would need to, obviously clean the plexiglass, well, that's not a big issue. So it was more, I think the bigger issue is trying to limit yourself to an amount of time that you need to serve all of your students lunch in a certain amount of time, so you don't cut into the academic aspect of the day.
So another follow-up question, how long is lunch?
It depends on the school.
Okay,
So usually at the elementary levels, it's somewhat equivalent to the length of time for recess, so it backs up. So anywhere between, I think, 20 to 25 minutes. I think at the high school, when they looked at their schedule for this year, I think it ended up being somewhere between 20 to 25. They're all about the same. Remember the fact that a lot of things have changed, where a student would have to leave their classroom, walk down, stand in a line, and unfortunately have about 15 minutes to shove the food down. Now it's being delivered to their classroom. So all they do is, go out, get it, however it's going to be, and they've got really that full time to eat in the classroom and not have to worry about walking someplace else.
So if students are going to have 20 to 25 minutes and the lunch is going to be prepared for delivery, why can we not feasibly set up the cafeteria with student desks, because we have less desks that are going to be used in the building. We don't need the round desks anymore. Space them out, you have less students that will be attending lunch every day because of the cohort model. And increase lunchtime if that's really something that's prohibiting this, and then therefore reduce the need to have extra monitors during lunch.
Well, because it still cuts into your academic content time.
I do get
And
that.
so remember, we need to meet the minimum hours, if you will. So I think, you could look at that, but I don't know what you're going to gain out of that makes sense, because now you have students moving. And that's the key that you don't want. You want to minimize the amount of student traffic. And as soon as you ask a cohort group to move, you now need someone to ensure that they're moving 6 feet apart. The more we allow you to move, the more we potentially put you out there with other students at risk. We're also now potentially putting kids in with other students. So now you've got that challenge of contact tracing when you know that if they're eating lunch, at least where they're 10, there's only 10. Now potentially, again, we know that it's not like you're going to get this because you walk past someone.
Right.
But we're trying to just minimize that amount of flow of traffic in a hallway and minimize, try to keep kids in cohort groups together for as much as we can during a day. So that's kind of the essential underpinnings of the guidance from DESE.
Right, and I guess another follow-up, and maybe I heard this wrong, but you'd have to be in the same contact with an individual for a certain prolonged period of time, they're saying, for contact tracing as being like a risk. So,
Not so much contact tracing
Okay.
as the potential of getting the
Okay.
transmission.
so,
For 15 minutes or more. Mm-hmm.
so, traveling through the hallway, I don't know if they'll be in the hallway for more than 15 minutes or so, but my thought is like a room like this, if we look around creatively through our school, and we have people that have staff lunch in the past, it's not like we haven't heard that teachers have done lunch duty in the past.
At the high school, not across the board.
So I guess I'm confused because if it could happen at the high school, why couldn't it happen in our other schools?
Because it was a duty that historically had been assigned to them as part of their day, which may have been in lieu of an additional class. I do not know the history.
Okay.
All right. Whereas at the elementary school, they're teaching all day, and they leave, as you know, to have their 30-minute lunch, and that's it. At the middle school, it could be very similar. I don't know the pattern or the history of why, in particular, a building gets assigned a duty and why another one does not, other than the nature of elementary versus secondary, let's say.
And then my last question is, as far as the ESSER money, how much total money is available?
It's a little over 720.
September.
Mrs. Griffin, I wonder too with the cafeteria issue, if in fact the social grouping sizes would prohibit us from using it. I think
Well,
we're
that's
back to the
part
groups
of it
of
with round
25.
tables.
I just mean any gathering of people. I believe,
Oh.
aren't we back to the 25? So we would still only be able to. It doesn't affect schools?
Schools are exempt
Wow.
from that in the capacity as a school.
Interesting.
Additional functions that you run, it could impact.
Right,
If we were
right.
running a school dance or something like
right,
that, I
okay.
would think. Not that
Interesting.
anybody would, but I believe we're exempt.
Thank you.
Did you
Go
have
ahead.
a-
Either one.
Could you just talk to me a little bit about the custodian use? How are we leveraging our custodians, what we have in each of our buildings? Because I can't imagine we need late coverage in the afternoon. Are we using them at all during the day? What does
Yes,
that look like?
so the additional, and forgive me, Dave, I can't remember when we went over all of the schedules and knew that we were short during the day. Those additional 19.5 hour for custodians will be taking on the additional day shift, and then we rearrange the night shift to have some overlapping, starting a little bit earlier. So you'll always have 2 custodians on, where in some buildings you only had 1 on for the day. You'll now have minimum 2 that you would have on during the day shift.
Possibly 3 or?
Could be at the high school. Yes, there could be some overlapping. I just don't, I have it back in my office. I can share it with you Thursday. Justin and I went over it when we were meeting with custodians. We met with the union to go over this additional staffing needs early on. So it was a while ago when we did that, so I don't recall exactly. But we did overlapping on the evening shift, rearranged that shift, knowing that our buildings probably, particularly at the high school initially to start the year, may not be utilized because we're not going to have a lot of things going on. Certainly we may have to go back and revisit it, around January when maybe we can start doing things a little differently, but.
I have a follow-up on that.
Yep.
With the custodians and with the extra people on, will every desk be sanitized every evening?
Well, every desk needs to be sanitized as soon as a cohort group changes. So as soon as students at the high school move, those desks need to be wiped down. And then they need to be wiped down before and after lunch. So the answer is yes, they have to be.
Okay, will it be the responsibility of the student, the teacher, or the custodian?
I think it's not going to be necessarily the responsibility of the custodian, who may be in other places in the building. I think it's going to be a shared responsibility between students, depending appropriate on age, and staff.
See, and I also think there's ways you can get creative too, at least in my building I'm looking at, having the setup, but having X's on certain desks.
Sure.
So certain kids can't sit in those desks.
Right.
And then once the cohorts leave, those kids sit there.
Right.
So we're able to clean,
Yeah,
every couple of
we've
periods.
we've removed those desks so that, so now you've
Right.
only got 10 or 12 at the
Right.
most, or 13. So yes, there are different ways of doing
it's definitely
doing
different
that.
ways.
But I mean, if you follow the guidance, as soon as my period 1 English grade 9 class leaves and another class comes in, then those desks need to be cleaned. So we're looking at making sure that we've got the spray bottles and what we need and the paper towels, which is probably the easiest way to do it, and to either appoint someone, or in some instances teachers would much rather do it themselves because they don't want to rely on a 13 or 14-year-old who's ready to roll to do that. But bear in mind too that we're staggering at the high school level, we're staggering that dismissal to your next class. So it's not going to be everybody leaves when that bell rings. So there's that downtime that one could probably ask one of those students to do that, and could get it done safely and quickly.
One question actually, it doesn't involve this, so we can get back to this. But is there any more discussion regarding the 22 positions of health and safety monitor?
Up to,
Up to 22?
Yeah, because
Up to
I-
22, yes, okay.
So I'm assuming, like all good administrators, that's a wish list.
it appears to be, although I did go back, Mr. Burke, a number of times to emphasize that when we spend this money, obviously I have less to do some other things.
Yeah.
We may have to revisit this and cut it back, and there's no question about it.
So my question was going to be, given these schedules that I'm looking at, could they possibly do with maybe 3 per building,
Yeah.
where one's in the morning, rotating, checking all the bathrooms, 2 during lunch and recess, and then another 1 in the afternoon? But
It is the money is a moving target. You're gonna hear me talk in a minute about what is a higher priority need for us based on staffing. So it could very well be that when I sit down and go over the total figures, again, not knowing whether we're gonna hire bus monitors ourselves, which is less money, or go with bus monitors from the company, which probably adds at least $5,000 more to the yearly. So we're trying to look at squeezing a lot of it out of that 720 with the staffing, but yeah, could be less, just based on the fact that we may not have the funds available.
I guess I'm kind of confused. So if the students are in different classrooms and they're not moving around, and say, for example, that there's only, 3 monitors at a certain time of day, those monitors are supposed to be between all those classrooms? And when they walk away from the classroom, who's observing the children?
Well, I guess my question is, observing them for what?
Well, if you said that they were being observed to, watch what they're doing, if they're interacting, if they're in like certain distances from each other.
I would clarify that probably more in the hallway, when
Okay.
the bell rings and they're moving, particularly at the secondary level, or going to wherever. But it will look different at the different schools.
So in our
But-
elementary school,
Mhm.
would there be a possibility of kids sitting in a classroom having no adult during lunchtime watching them?
There would probably be a monitor between 2 classrooms.
So I guess, are we gonna have enough monitors if we do that? Like, it doesn't make me, I feel like it's
Well, you
kind of
run
too
so
wishy-washy.
many lunches at a time, so not everyone is eating lunch at the same time. At the Barton, if you run 3 lunches, the principals have said, based on the number 6, let's say at Barton, he'd be covered for all of his classrooms.
Okay, because I thought you said you weren't running multiple lunches before. So you are running multiple lunches?
Well, you run 3, you run.
In the school?
He runs 3 lunches with multiple classrooms in each lunch.
Okay,
Yeah, so you're gonna have more than one that's eating. So you're gonna need coverage while the teacher is gone from that classroom to have his or her lunch.
so if we already have them divided up into 3
Mm-hmm.
separate groups, is it not possible to put them in maybe 3 separate places in the building?
In Barton, no.
Okay.
You just don't have the space other than cafeteria, and then you've got the movement of students now in that time frame. So now you've cut down their ability to have, lunch. It makes sense to keep them in one place and not have them move unnecessarily throughout the building.
But we're not decreasing the amount of lunchtime that they've had in the past. You're saying like
That's right. We are not. No, we did not go back and decrease it. I think at Barton and Chafee, I think, Kim, I think it's 40 minutes, 20 for recess and 20 for lunch.
Right.
Yeah. So that has been what you've had in the past, and so that will continue to be. Nothing has changed there.
okay. And then how do kids before they go back to their classroom to eat lunch or whatever wash their hands if they're going to the recess? Like, what does that look like? You're telling me that they can't leave their classroom, but now you're telling me that they might have recess?
No, I'm saying to you that you try to minimize the amount of time. So if they're going to recess, they stay in their cohort groups, meaning their classroom group.
Right.
There's a specified area as opposed to you can just mingle.
Okay.
Before they go out, they're supposed to sanitize, so there needs to be something mounted on the wall. Sanitize before they go out.
Yeah.
Sanitize before they come in, back into their classroom.
And are they going to have an opportunity to wash their hands?
They may not. It may sanitize with, the product that you have. Either one, hand washing or sanitizing. It really is dependent on the amount of time that again, one takes a lot more time to do than the other, where you could just go boom, boom on a touchless and get the product and you're good to go.
So I wonder if we do need more time for lunch. I mean, that's one.
I think we're going to have to, see how this plays out. This is all new for us, obviously. We haven't, until we see how this plays out and we actually run a day, we don't know what that's going to look like. As far as needing more time. And if we do, we'll have to readjust it. Yeah.
When are you anticipating when's their start dates potentially?
Their start date would be, if we go to hybrid, it's October 5th. We probably want to bring them in, for a little orientation before that time for a day or so, I think.
Yeah, because there's some
Yeah.
pretty big expectations
Yeah.
about trying to have
Yeah.
kids, don't know any kids, don't have any
Right.
relationships, but yet they're going to be asking kids to keep masks on. They're going to be, especially up at the high school level, they're going to be asked to keep kids in the high school lunch classroom. Well, oh no, I can go over here.
Yeah.
I just think there's lots that
Sure.
they need to be trained on. I just want to say for the record, I really wish we tried to utilize our cafeterias. We're trying to bring kids back into the building. I'm not opposed to it, but there should be some sense of normalcy for kids. Eating lunch in classroom is not normal. Having things delivered to their classroom is not normal. So many things could go wrong within that. Oh, I didn't have any ketchup. Can I get this? Oh, I ordered this. I ordered that. I still think that, yes, I agree. We should try to limit movement, but there's going to be movement no matter what we do. And I don't know. I just feel that we should be trying to get kids back into the cafeteria at that capacity. Pal brought it up, just set up desks. It's not ideal, but at least it gets them in the cafeteria. That's what we're doing in my building. And then I'm utilizing the stage that's there and maybe a part of the gym if I need to, which abuts it. But it just gives some sense of normalcy. It gets the teachers their break. Administrators are watching kids. I'm concerned with the things we're gonna be asking kids to do, and they're gonna be having, monitors who just got hired, tasked to do that job, and that's a lot to ask them. And I do agree, I think Quarry brought it up, I think we should limit the number. I'd be in agreement of going lower, 22, I know you said up to 22, but.
Yes, they had requested
Yeah,
20 when I asked.
I'm not comfortable with 22, because up to 22 means you could go to 22, so I just want to put that out there.
Thank you. My last question, and then any other, I'll call for a vote here, we'll make the motion. Will these positions, individuals be quarried and fingerprinted?
Oh, gosh, yes.
And
Yeah.
fingerprinted?
Expectation of anyone who's employed. is
So it
both.
does take some time
Yep.
for that to come through.
Yeah, Quarries will come back instantly, basically. And when I meet with them, I tell them as a condition of employment, and in their employment letter, what needs to happen. They have a 7-day window to get both done, but the Quarry we do ourselves, and so it's a matter of them going to the location that they need to go to get the fingerprinting done, and that cost is borne by them.
Any further discussion? Pal?
How many recess lunch monitors do we presently have? I think that question was asked before, we didn't really know, did we?
I couldn't tell you how many they had in the past. I'm going to say that when I was here 2 years ago, there might have been 4 at Barton. Maybe 6, because you had 3 lunches then. I don't know at Chafee how many you had.
I believe you're right.
Chafee
I believe
has-
it was 2 in the cafeteria and 2 out at recess. So
Okay,
there were,
so you had
were
4.
correct, there were 4 aides total, and it could have been 6 at Clara Martin because there were 3 grade
Yeah.
levels. So minimum
So I-
4 for the elementaries.
So I think, well, 1 was inside, 1 was outside, and they flipped. So you had 6 at Barton 2 years ago, and the 4 then at Chafee, working, of course, those abbreviated hours. Yeah. Regardless of whether you have these, you would still need, if you didn't vote these, we would still need to have those people, obviously.
Further questions? I'll entertain a motion to hire up to 22 positions with a start date on or about October 5th for the health and safety monitor positions of Ossining Public Schools.
I'll make the motion.
I have a second. Do I have a second on that?
Not for me, no.
For further discussion,
Further discussions or get to a vote?
I'm not comfortable with the number of 20, up to 22, like as Mr. Burke stated. And I also don't feel like I'm understanding fully like the use of these people and how it would work and the schedule of these people. I do see a schedule in front of me, but it's hard for me to envision what these people and how these people are going to be, how this is all honestly going to work in this way. I don't really feel comfortable, honestly, with this this model at the moment. But that's just me, I have reservations. I don't know if anybody else has reservations, but I certainly do. And
Okay, do I have a second on this?
No.
Motion fails.
Can we propose another motion? I propose the same exact motion that the chair just put out, with the exception of up to 12 hires.
I would second that.
Okay, motion on the floor, we have a second. Discussion. Yes.
Dr. Nash, I would assume if we approved this motion and they hired 12 and they came back to you and said, we can't make it work, that you would then come back to us and say,
I certainly would.
we may need. Okay, that's all I need to know.
Where would these 12 be allocated to?
3 per building. If that's what the That's what the school department,
Yeah,
if that's what they wanted to do, I really can't allocate it for them.
Right, well, I was saying where we came for 22 to 12. Just the background on where that number came from.
For me, if you're asking me personally, I as a planner, 3 per building, that's how I planned it. I mean, they could allocate it 4 and 1, 2 and 1. High school seems to have the capacity potentially through, duties that they might not need as many, so maybe they shift a few, I don't know.
Okay.
Middle school has 3 lunch monitors, I don't know what happened to them. Clara Barton had 4 recess monitors when I was there, I don't know what happened to them. So
Well,
there's
those
people
are-
out there too.
Yeah, those are just, the positions are just eliminated, they're a year-to-year position, so.
Right, so you bring
Yeah.
them back.
If they
right?
so choose. to
Well, they would
Right, well,
apply
that's
for
what I'm
this,
saying.
If they
this
apply for this
position.
job, yes.
Right.
Or they apply for the position.
Right.
Right, September.
So if we cut it to 12, essentially cutting it by 50% of the request, these people are gonna end up working more than the 19 and a half hours that we're trying to keep them.
We would not be able to have them work more than that.
That's what I mean. So how are we gonna cover
Because
from,
then they're eligible for benefits.
in Barton, from 8:30 to 1:20 is where the need is. If we cut that, because it was staggered, I believe is what was discussed, you would have a couple and then they'd go home and others would come in. They may overlap for a short period of time, but I don't know how we would keep them under the full-time requiring benefit job status.
Well, I think the difficulty probably, if I might just at Barton, would be that with 3, he wouldn't be able to cover the lunch if he had 6 lunch and recess this past year. So you would still need to look at some other combination to figure out. So you probably need to hire some lunch or recess monitor or something, because he used 6 to begin with, and now if you're not replacing those and you're just having these individuals, albeit a different job description, you would probably need to recognize that there would be some need for the old lunch recess or some kind. I'd have to go back and talk with the principals about that to find out.
Yeah, just so John, where that came from me was not the need to have a person at each bathroom in the morning and in the afternoon. So that's why I would scale it back, but have more in the midday, which, listening to Dr. Nash, you could probably suggest 3 per building of these folks, and then also a couple lunch and recess monitors who are just lunch and recess monitors, like the old
I think
system.
three schools, if I recall, use lunch or lunch recess monitors. At the middle school, I believe you had 3 for lunch. Obviously, they didn't have recess. And then at the elementary schools, you had the combination.
Okay, well,
So, Mr. Burke, you were saying that you were thinking about, like, just for clarification, having lunch and recess monitors that existed in the past coming back?
Correct. It sounds like you would, because they're not using the cafeterias, you would not feasibly be able to cover all the lunches with 3 people. Correct, Dr. Nash?
I believe so. I can't tell you how many classrooms are eating all at once in all the different buildings. So based on, again, the principal's request, knowing that they weren't going to have lunch monitors anymore, they're the ones that requested these numbers. So I'm assuming it's based on the fact that they needed that number, thinking in terms of covering lunch.
So I see a greater need in the middle of the day as opposed to the 3 people in the building in the morning and 3 people in the building in the afternoon just watching bathrooms.
I see what you're saying.
September, go ahead.
I think too, though, we're forgetting about the arrival and the dismissal, and I know there's been discussions of how students will be staggered in and out, and those monitors are gonna be needed for that as well. Honestly, I feel like we need to trust the administration that they're not looking to waste our money. But if we really wanna keep these kids safe, and this is a means to that end, I think cutting the requests by almost 50%, I would be okay with cutting by a couple maybe, but I don't think they're looking to have bodies not working, and they definitely have the student's best interest in mind. Being able to, especially in the early childhood, the younger schools, 1 person walking around between 3 bathrooms I don't think will be effective, especially if we're going to ask them to go in between students to disinfect the faucets they'll be touching, the paper towel dispenser, the countertop, etc. So I just really, I feel like a little bit of a cut may be okay, probably at the upper schools, but I just really do see a need for it. And we do have arrival right through dismissal plus the day stuff with lunch and recess. So that's all.
September, I'm gonna have to agree with you. That I feel that more hands, eyes in the building at this stage. Our teachers have to stay in the classroom. Yeah, pop out there when the cohorts move and all that. If there's a disruption in the hallways, kids running in the hallways, something like that. We don't need teachers chasing kids down the hallway right now. There's enough stress it is dealing with discipline type issues that we want teaching going on. I think that having the hallway, the health safety monitors, the people in the hallway, that extra group going through the lunches, just to make it an organized setting. If you have more adults around, and the kids will jump on these kids, they will jump on these people right away because they're gonna see them every day. Pal brought that up about the teachers, same thing. With the cafeteria workers and the lunch ladies. Everyone knew the lunch ladies were. I remember one of them passed away a little while ago. I thought, oh, what a nice lady. And that they were so nice, the smiling faces that the kids see every day in that adult capacity. And a lot of the young kids don't understand if it's a teacher, a hall monitor, what their pay rate is.
Right.
But they're an adult in the building that's looking out for that child. I know that I have to go with my administrators. I'm still up to 22, is administrators tell us that's what they need to keep their building safe. I'm not in favor of this new motion, but I will call for the vote.
And I'm gonna say, September, I will fully admit, I forgot all about arrival and dismissal in that discussion, so I appreciate you bringing that back up. That is another challenge that I wasn't thinking about.
Any further discussion? Val?
I would want to be reassured, though, that our teachers were stepping in the hallway and that they were being fully active in arrival and dismissal, and I'm sure they're going to be. But as much as I want to have hope, Mr. Coonan, that everybody knows these aids, as far as when I say everybody, I mean our students, sometimes I think our students don't have that connection with those people in the hallways. Some of them do, some of them don't. And they don't know those kids very well. And it's often our kids that sometimes are the quiet ones or the reserved ones or whatnot, that have social emotional concerns that these adults are not aware of because they just don't know the kids. So we're bringing these different people in the building.
Yeah, we are, Val, but also, Val, you don't know, the first grader doesn't know the second grade teacher. And it's the adult in the building. I remember, the same thing in school, they don't know every teacher, and the kids, they don't make that distinguishment until someone says, oh, that's a secretary, oh, she's not a nice lady. She's probably the nicest lady in the world because the kid gets in trouble. So I do disagree with you on that, but I respectfully disagree.
I would like, honestly, the kids to have some way of knowing these people besides just walking through the building and seeing them, at lunch. I feel like the kids gotta know these people a little bit better. Like, one thing that comes to my mind is you brought up the allergies, right? So the kids are reporting to the cafeteria for that. But certain things, like, people need to know that work with our kids, that there's life-threatening allergies if they're going into a classroom or something.
That list goes out every year to all classroom teachers to know that. Certainly, it's the same thing that when you go through your lunch line initially, that somehow you're flagged and they know that. I don't see that, quite frankly, oftentimes it's classroom teachers know it, particularly because years ago we used to serve food in classrooms, which we no longer generally can do. Mm-hmm. So that kind of stimulated that discussion about making sure that every single classroom teacher had that list that included not just life-threatening allergies, but any kind of allergic reaction to something. So if you brought a class outside and they were allergic to bees, that you knew that. So with respect to teachers, part of it is governed by your contract. If your contract only requires teachers to be here 10 minutes before the start of the school day, I can tell you that students are arriving at the high school 20 to 25 minutes sometimes. So you have no one but 2 administrators potentially to cover, and that's impossible when you're trying to keep now these cohorts more separate. So before, we used to remember they all went to the cafeteria and they all stood there, or they were all lined up in the hallway in the middle school. So all that has to change directly. You have to change that. You can't put them together. So now you've got that, what do you do with them all? And who supervises them? So it's a little bit, that piece of it is different. If we could control arrival and dismissal and say everybody has to be here at a certain time, no sooner, it would be great, but you're never going to get that. We have parents dropping off sometimes a half hour before the start of the school day. Where are those students going to go? Now, potentially, if they can't go to the classroom because your teacher isn't there, because their start time is now 15 minutes later, someone has to oversee them, i.e. a monitor or someone. If you only got one building principal, where are they going to be? So you need some other hands to do some of those things that before we didn't worry about it as much. We still worried about it because we needed supervision based on their age. But a lot of it is a contract that says teachers come in 10 minutes before.
I totally understand that, but as a building principal, you got to think out of the box. You got to do things differently. This time is different. So no one's in the building a half hour before. If their parent drops them off half hour before, they'll have to wait outside. That's on the parent. And we contract the bus company. The bus company's first stop at the high school needs to be at a certain time. Like, this is where you need to be. And then when those kids come in, we have to have either advisory or a homeroom period where they just report to. So it's 10 minutes, their first drop-off can't be 10 minutes before the teachers start their day. So they are responsible to go to a homeroom. I mean, there's ways to get around that. So to me, that shouldn't be the driver for more staff. if anything, or staff that we're not even sure who they are, we're thinking of bringing 22 different people into buildings, people that we don't know, people, are you gonna find 22? So maybe to the chair's point, maybe 12's a little bit too low, so maybe I can make an amendment and bump the number up a little bit. But again, 22 people to do duties, to Corey's point, that can be, to me, the driver from what I heard from you, Dr. Nash, is this is around coverage for lunch.
One piece of it, certainly.
Big piece of it.
one
It's a big
of
piece
it.
of it. It's the big contractual piece that gets the teachers their lunch, because we're not gonna look to do cafeterias, which is fine. For now, that's fine. So to me, to Corey's point earlier too, if we start with a lower number and they come back to you with a need for more, then you come to us. So maybe I make an amendment to my amendment. Can I do that? And we bump the number up a little bit high?
You can amend the motion, yes.
I amend the motion with the same language to say, up to 16.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Further discussion?
Discussion.
Yes.
So let's say that we go with the 16 and we find out, in the first or second week that it's not working for us. Now we need to take the time to find the additional 6. In the meantime, some of this isn't getting done, putting the kids at risk. If it's the bathroom cleanliness, if it's the monitoring after recess, lunch, etc., to sanitize your hands, something is not getting done for that period of time while we look for hiring Corey these additional 6 bodies. I just strongly encourage that we stick with the number the principals threw out to us, and keeping in mind too that out of that 22, we probably already own 12 of those as the lunch and recess cafeteria monitors that we currently, in our budget have supported in the past. We're not looking to add 22 bodies to our current numbers. It's probably closer to 10, if I'm correct. We've had lunch and recess monitors in the past. We're only looking for an additional hour and a half per person compared to our previous payroll. It was a 3-hour-a-day job, I believe.
So why weren't they in the budget, Dr. Nash?
These positions?
They are.
The ones that we currently have, we had
They're
last.
still in your
course
budget, we
they
haven't
are.
removed it, they're in your FY21 budget, you
Right.
just wouldn't be funding them.
Right, so were those positions being recalled back, I guess, prior to us voting on these additional positions?
No, they haven't, they're year-to-year appointments, they get letters every year, so they
Right,
only work for a
year-to-year
year.
appointments
Yeah.
who do the same work we're looking for. And,
Yeah.
to me, to have these people cleaning bathrooms, that's not what this job description is. That could violate, as Dr. Nash said earlier, the custodial contract. So, I guess my question then is, why haven't we reached out to those people and brought them back in?
Well, we haven't hired anybody, simply because this is a different job description, and they've applied, they would be applying for this job
But
description.
these people did recess and lunch
Right,
monitoring.
but they
That is the
could very well-
driver of what we need for this, part of this, right? So why haven't we got those people back on board? And then we would just be looking for additional people, right?
They would be.
Yeah.
Hold on, please, excuse me, the questions getting through, we're getting way off topic here. We go through Dr. Nash. Dr. Nash, please respond.
So they could apply for this position, because it's a different position than lunch and recess. They could have very well applied for it, but it's not the same position, so that's why.
It's a different job description
I understand
than
that,
what we voted last week.
Right.
I understand that.
Thank you.
I thought these were new positions, I didn't realize they encompassed the old
I
lunch and
think
recess.
in our
monitoring.
discussion with the principals, when we were describing what this health and safety, when they said it could encompass lunch and recess at my level, so therefore I wouldn't need the current positions that we have, the year to year.
Further discussion? Call for the vote, roll call vote. Mrs. Forbes?
No.
Mrs. Griffin?
Can you restate the motion?
Alan, could you read back, please, for the record?
Yep, it was to hire up to 16 of the health and safety monitor positions.
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Cannacchioli?
Yes.
I'll vote no as well. Let the record show 3 in the affirmative, 2 against. Motion passes up to 16. Okay. Next order of business is Rocky Hill area. We did receive correspondence back From Mrs. Griffin's request last time, and in our packet from Jeremy Gwinnett, there was a cross, which came from Nicholas Packard. The request was a crossing at Prince Street, but if there's any crosswalk at town, they need a crossing guard. Rocky Hill is the one to re-implement, and Sergeant Gwinnett, that was from Sergeant Gwinnett, based upon Nicholas Packard's, and his input is there are 26 students potentially walking between that area to the middle school or high school. Elementary students are provided bus transportation. So I guess as we're looking at a different portion away from that we always kept in our discussion last week, is we kept the crossing guard positions in, that we worked in the monitors, into the monitor's job, the cafeteria workers, recess people and all that. So I guess, is it the will in the budget, is it being will of the school committee want to fund a crossing guard for the Rocky Hill area? Would be an AM and PM position. Should I entertain a motion for that? I'll entertain a motion to fund for a crossing guard position at the Rocky Hill area.
I would make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'd second that.
Moved in, second, discussion. Yes.
From that area, if they're coming from Rocky Hill Road or that neighborhood behind the church, there is no sidewalk. They are required to cross the street and then walk down that sidewalk and cross back over to get to either the middle or the high school. So, and there are a ton of kids in that area, and I think this is super important for safety for our students.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely correct. I think how many near misses you see coming out of Rocky Hill when the pit's down there and people on Saturdays bringing their lawn debris. It's just surprised there hasn't been any major accidents there.
Well, there has been one,
There has been one, thank you.
like 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
If I may,
Go ahead.
there was no mention here in this correspondence of a potential light or something else being put there. And, you know, I think a crossing guard is fantastic. I think it's a necessity, but sometimes kids are crossing, you know, later. I mean, maybe not this year, because I don't think kids are going to be staying after school for, you know, potential extra help or whatnot. But my concern is if they're walking home later than a crossing guard is there, and there's no real flashing light.
That's something you have
That's
to
a
petition to the
DPW
state,
That
right?
that is
Yeah.
to the that in that area we are. I'm trying to think if we're still a state road or if we're back to the town. We might be back on the town on Route 12 right that. We have to check with DPW on that one there to petition the state. I know they do it in Worcester a lot because my whole fear is we put a crossing guard out there, but it's putting him or her at risk to get hit because now that's a whole different traffic pattern. And they're out there with the stop sign, and I see it right out here when I drop my child off. You saw it when you did bus duty. How many times they go right through the crossing guard?
So
That's and they're well armored with the reflectors and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the flashing is really important. So let's get this motion done, and as part of that secondary, request through DPW if it is town road, or we'll contact Representative Frost to help out with the state through state highway. Yes, Pat.
I thought we made a motion last time too to contact the Board of Selectmen besides the police department, maybe.
It was the Board of Selectmen with DPW.
So were they contacted, and do we have any correspondence from them?
We have, and they would probably refer to the safety officer or the Sergeant Gwinnett. I'm not sure where it went from there, if he spoke for all of them. But we should double check, we should be double checking. This is correspondence we have at this point. Okay. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Record show 5 in the affirmative, and we'd like to fund the crossing guard position for that area. Thank you. Okay. All right, new business. Dr. Nash, if you want, I'm gonna go to subcommittees first. Do you have anything else on the recommended new business, and then?
No.
Okay. All right, let's see, subcommittee, study groups, district town staff policy subcommittee. We have the face covering policy. That we have it in our packet. And Pal and Dave, you wanna take the lead on this one and then refer back to Dr. Nash? How do you wanna do that? policy EBC dash, that S or 5?
So EBC-S is policy on COVID-related issues.
Yeah.
And then we do have one on face covering as well.
Okay, we'll start with policy, so EBC dash S, and then we'll go to face coverings after that.
Okay, so the policy on COVID-related issues, this came from MASC as recommendation to consider, and it basically helps our superintendent deal basically with any type of things that could creep up with COVID. So if you read through here, this is, potential things that they thought might be a concern, where kind of our current policies would be put on hold, and this would kind of come into play during the time period of COVID. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Canacchioli, but when COVID, resides and we get back to life as normal, then our old policies kind of would revert back. But this would kind of give our superintendent some more flexibility with our policies that are presently on file.
Yeah, so basically, if you look at the first paragraph under the first set of bullets, school committee will approve the, no, wait a sec, that's not the one I was just looking at, I'm sorry. A couple paragraphs below that, the school committee will authorize the superintendent to act expeditiously in executing the back-to-school plan in accordance with current law and regulation, and will, where noted, authorize the superintendent to suspend, revise, or recommend policies, rules, and protocols as needed to serve the best interest and safety of students, their families, and the community. It kind of pretty much captures, it just gives the superintendent the ability to kind of just work on the fly, so to speak. If something comes up, she has the ability to do what's in the best interest of all, safety-wise.
With
With
the,
respect to these policies. that are
Respect to these
listed here
policies that are listed.
right, that are listed there, but also in duly notifying the school committee and working in conjunction with the school committee. So there are checks and balances.
Correct.
That goes through that, and sometimes it may be through the chair. If Dr. Nash has to make an emergency move, that she would call the chair. If I was available, call Dave right down the line and say, look, this is what I have to do this overnight, if we can't wait till the next meeting. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear when it says that, as it says through here, and I just want to pull one out there, with the advice and consent of the school committee. It says superintendent with the advice and consent of the school committee may, for example, suspend or modify individual district policies to address COVID-19 emergencies, and it goes all the way down through. So in that language is, it may not be the full committee sometimes, that it may be the chair or vice chair. If we can't be, because of open meeting laws, we just can't vote over email, and we can't voice poll it. Okay.
And I think too, Mr. Coonan, a lot of this stuff is already things that have happened with the Department of Ed and, it says secondary ed. These are things that have already kind of come down the pike. We've already faced school calendar changes multiple times. Yeah.
If I might just add, so by voting this, it would mean that with those particular policies, I wouldn't need to come, let's take the visitor policy, where typically you have a policy that allows visitors. If you vote this entire policy, I would not need to come back to you to say, I'm amending that particular policy, because you voted to allow me to do that. So with these policies,
With, again, working with the chair.
yes, to notify and say, I've done this, so that you would know. I'd probably say to you, here are some things that we've done. You'll hear it in discussion, probably,
Questions, further discussion? Intended motion to adopt policy EBC-S, waiving the second reading.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, further discussion? Roll call vote, Mrs. Forbes?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Canacchioli?
Yes.
Mr. Coonan votes yes, 5 in the affirmative. Motion, the policy is passed as we waive the second reading. EBCFA, face coverings.
Chair, could I just, one thing before we move on that, I think we talked about it in policy. Is there a way for Helen to make a note for us that when we are through this, and we will get through this, that we can revisit this to have it taken out, you know what I mean? Just so
Yeah.
that we need a reminder.
Need a reminder thing.
I don't know if there's some way we can do that, I don't know how to do it, but just wanted to get it out on the record.
Thank you. All right. EBCFA, face coverings. Scott Gill and Ms. Griffin, who wants to take the lead on this one?
We discussed this in great detail, and it was proposed that all staff and students in grades pre-K through 12 must wear masks except for the exceptions noted below. So it says individuals may be excused from the requirement for the following list of reasons per CDC guidelines. The individual has trouble breathing, is unconscious, is incapacitated, cannot remove the mask or face covering without assistance. We thought it was really important that everybody, even our littlest ones, have the face covering. We know that the guidance is different from the CDC, but we want to keep our staff and our children safe. So that's the amended changes that we have made to this policy.
Thank you. Mrs. Forbes, well, actually, we all received the correspondence. And Mrs. Forbes, do you want me to read it? Was it requested by you to be read?
It
By
was.
the individuals to be read into the record?
Yes.
Okay. And you're gonna have to, came from Lena Hanlon?
Laney.
Laney Hamilton, I'm sorry, Hanlon, August 23rd, 2020, at 9:49 p.m. I thought I got it about 5:15, but okay. I'll read this into the record. Dear school committee principals and Superintendent Nash, I'm writing to you today in hopes that you'll vote against masking our youngest students. I am a licensed elementary educator and mother of 4. My older sons will not be going to school this year, as I will not mask my children, nor will I accept that as normal. I cringe when I hear people call it our new normal. Hiding one's faces will never be normal. Blocking self-expression from these young children will create a militant and scary school environment. While I disagree with masking any of my children, I realize that the state has mandated older children wear masks. I understand there is nothing I can do about that. I will not be sending them to Oxford Public Schools this year. However, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education did not mandate masks for kindergarten and first grade. This decision was clearly not random, but is based on academic and scientific evidence that masks on our youngest children can significantly impact their emotional, psychological, and academic growth. Part of the rationale for not requiring our youngest to wear masks comes from the American Academy of Pediatrics, which has affirmed that children, particularly young children, are less likely than adults to be infected with COVID-19. Furthermore, if they became infected, it appears children may not have the same transmission potential as adults. I am a very friendly person. I thrive on meeting and greeting people. I've wanted to break down in tears so often when I go to the store out of public and cannot see anyone smile at me. In return, can't have my smile be seen. I have difficulty understanding what anybody is saying as everything sounds so muffled. If I am having trouble communicating as an adult, imagine what it will be to our younger students. We spend so much time trying to shape our children socially and emotionally. If they can't read and learn social expression, what kind of introduction to education will we be giving them? My daughter has a minor speech impediment and is missing her front teeth, which exasperates the issue. While some kids are naturally outgoing and bubbly, my daughter tends to be a little shy and quiet, particularly in social settings such as the classroom. I know that putting a mask on my daughter's face will only serve to make her more reserved and reclusive. I am sure it will do the same for others as well. Facial expressions and cues aside, teachers need to see their students' mouths when they're teaching phonics. It is sometimes difficult to understand what young kids are saying even when they are wearing a mask. Put a mask on a child and you won't be able to tell if they're making a B or P sound. To create the proper groundwork for spelling and reading, we have to make sure these children are hearing and understanding the correct letters. Children watch the mouths of their parents and teachers while they're learning phonetical blending and phonograms. Likewise, teachers watch their students' mouths for the same reason. It is a crucial aspect for learning to read and write. It is for these reasons that I ask you to keep the decision of whether or not to mask our children just that, our decision. Our rights are being taken away from us every time we turn around. I vaccinate my children with the flu shot every year, but But after all 4 of them came down with the worst cases of the flu to ever hit my household last year, I decided this year I wasn't going to vaccinate them. And for my daughter, who was the sickest of all of them, I will have to if she's in school. I want what is best for my children. I assume everyone wants what is best for their child. Right now, my child needs to be with other children, engaged and challenging. She needs to feel safe and not fear her surroundings by masked faces. I respectfully request that you honor my wishes and let the beautiful smile of my daughter bless her teacher and her classmates. Respectfully, Lainey Hanlon. So that's been read into the record.
Thank you.
Okay. Discussion on this policy. September, good.
Did the committee speak with the teachers of pre-K, kindergarten, and first to get their feeling on it? Have we involved the teachers at all in this decision? Because I know that a huge part of it for us is keeping the teachers safe, and I'm curious to know if the
We've got
teachers.
correspondence from the Kim Davis, the union president, yep,
Can I ask if
requesting
that
for us
kindergarten
to
and
adjust
first
the
wear
policy.
masks?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Mrs. Davis, would you care to speak on this?
Yeah.
On behalf of the union? If you just come forward,
Sure.
we're 6 feet at the table.
I did speak with all of the kindergarten and first grade teachers and asked them what their comfort level was, and it was unanimous that they all felt, as well as preschool, who was also concerned about the wearing of masks. So it was unanimous that they were all very much concerned about their health and safety as well, and they felt masks were important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And another follow-up on that. Have we considered for those teachers getting the clear masks? Have we done that for them?
We have made some purchases, yeah.
Like a face shield type deal?
The clear masks, so
Clear
you can
masks.
see their mouth and their lips move, as
Okay.
Mrs. Hanlon was
We
saying.
have done that, I'm not sure how many we purchased, but I know that we did, particularly for some of the substantially separate classrooms in that.
And guidance does permit too, if the teacher is in front and is far enough back, that they could just wear the shield. So the
Yes.
kids can see the mouth movements.
Right. Thank you. Further discussion. Corey.
I guess 2 things. Have we looked into those masks for the students? Because as Mrs. Hanlon points out, being able to see a student produce sounds is more important, just as important as them being able to see the teacher produce
I don't
sounds.
believe that we have purchased those for, I know in large quantities. We may have purchased some for some students who are, at risk or in substantially separate, but that may even be on a case-by-case basis, depending on what a parent feels. Some have sensory issues, but we have not made that purchase. I know that they, I don't know what the cost is and I don't know what the availability is, but I know we haven't made blanket purchase. One of the, as you know, the guideline is that parents provide those for them on a case-by-case basis if they feel that that's important, certainly. But the answer is no.
May I second that?
Sure.
So while I absolutely want to respect our teachers, and I, being an administrator, I have teachers of my own who feel exactly the same way. I also think we need to respect parents, and parents are gonna, like Ms. Hanlon, feel as though if the CDC is saying the younger students shouldn't have to wear them, why is the school saying the younger students should?
The American Academy of Pediatrics came out this past week with 2 things. One was, I believe, and I was going to pull it, that all students should wear masks no matter the age. And the second one was minimum 6 feet. Let's see if I can pull that up. It was actually last week.
That was a change this past week.
That
Nash?
I think came out last week, if I remember. But let me see if I can pull that up while you're discussing that. Let's see.
Looking at anything else?
One question.
Yeah.
While she's looking that up.
Sure.
When I look over at the policy, the written note from the physician, it just concerns me a little bit for people having to get to that doctor's appointment. Would we accept something, like, I don't want someone to have to go pay a copay to get a note from the physician that they should be exempt from a mask. So how we're gonna do that? Because even to have that doctor send it, parents will be charged for that.
I think
Go ahead.
So-
telemed and things like that. I think that I would like to think that our Commonwealth has good health care as far as like people being covered across the board. Yes, I think you'll have to incur a charge as a parent, But if you're going for an annual well visit or you're going in for your flu vaccination, which we all know that we have to do now, that would probably be the opportune time to have that discussion with your physician.
Thank you. Good
I
point.
know in the past, and I'm not gonna say, every insurance is different.
Right.
I know where I've gotten letters for my children,
You
for
can call
myself, on certain issues, that I've done it right through like the telemed, through the portal, just like requesting a referral, requesting a prescription, that you don't have to, the old days having to come in and see you, where you needed to, and it's all done via email.
Okay, great.
I've had that experience, but I can't say every
Right.
care program is on the same level.
I haven't had the need, so I've never experienced it. I just wanted to know for myself and for the parents.
But I think 4 years ago, you'd have to go pay a copay for it.
Yeah.
I think they've really stepped up to that. Have you found anything?
Yes, on the 13th of August, the AAP urges universal cloth face coverings for those ages 2 and up with quote-unquote rare exception. So children ages 2 years and older can and should wear cloth face coverings when not able to physically distance while in schools, childcare, and other group settings. The guidance also indicates that cloth face covering should be considered in the home to protect at-risk and medically fragile family members. Let me just see. They go through the same thing. Breathing incapacitated should not. Let me see if there's anything else. I think that was it.
Thank you. And I'll also say, these same guidelines are not just for students, they're also for all staff. Anyone entering the building, anyone entering the building not wearing a mask will not be allowed into the building. And principals, again, they're responsible for policing their own building. That there should be no exceptions to this. That if this goes through, this is school committee policy. That isn't just enforce it as you see me. This is a policy that is put in place for the health and safety of all our student, staff, families. Okay, further questions? Yes.
I just want to thank Mrs. Hanlon for the very well-written letter. She makes a lot of great points. I love the fact advocating for her children. I think it's great. I do think, to speak to Corey's point about the teaching of phonics, I do think that at all capacities of education, we have to look to do things differently. So I still think there's capacity to do that where we can see the child's mouth. We just have to invest in, different, whether it's a shield, whether it's plexiglass, I know a lot of, so there's ways for us to get creative. I mean, that's a great point, there's no doubt. But I think it's now, we have to adjust to what's in front of us. And based on those guidelines and based on our subcommittee policy, we thought it was fair to bring this to all of you for all. But we just don't feel there should be exceptions. It needs to be for all. Exceptions obviously based on medical and the other things indicated. So, but I just wanted to thank her. Very well written. Nice job.
Thank you. Yes. Also, too, as we get into the professional development piece, and as school staffs get together, issues like what people need for their PPE or for their classroom type equipment, if there's something specialized out there, they should be forwarded to the school committee, and we'll see where we can modify our budget to get staff all the help that they can. As Mr. Knopfler said, things have changed. The way you do business has changed. And we're here to help any way that we can. We don't have a bottomless pocketbook, but we'll do the best that we can to entertain requests. And probably at the same note, to my charge of Dr. Nash and to the principals, were some of the everyday requests of teachers in terms of supplies that didn't make it in on the budget to be really frivolous with spending money. If it gets down to PPE, yes. If anything that didn't come in under the budget, like, oh, I forgot to order this set of workbooks or something like that, let's take a long look at that if it didn't get the budget at that point. Because we were in a tight budget, and now we have to really do our best to keep it right on the line. All right. Any other discussion of policy EBCFA? Entertain a motion to adopt policy EBCFA as written with the second reading waived.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Roll call vote. Mrs. Forbes?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Burke,
Yes.
Mr. Cannacchioli.
Yes.
And Mr. Coonan votes yes. 5 in the affirmative. Policy is passed, waiving second reading. All right, capital requests. Justin, Mr. Ledoux could not be with us this evening, and filling in, we have our capital requests, and we have this separate addendum sheet that came out from a rather long document. And Dr. Nash, just give us a quick update, to the best of your
Sure.
ability in this.
So, what you have this evening is a list, a single page, because you have the 290-plus page document, but if I can walk you through the single page list of projects that either have been funded already or recommendations for projects that you will see in bold yellow that we are recommending that we could fund out of revolving accounts. And the specific revolving account that we could fund that from is listed on the right-hand side. So there are 6 of those, and I'll walk you through those and try to remember all of the discussion that I had with Justin about those. The first is the football field scoreboard. I believe this has been on for a number of years, but you certainly can correct me on that. It initially was going to be funded as a part of a capital request for FY22. There's the potential that you could fund that out of your athletic revolving. And again, these are recommendations to you for consideration based on the size of that and based on what Justin has identified as the fund that it could come from. The second one on there are food warmers. Request again from our food service director. Those are needed at Barton and OMS. Again, could be funded through our food service revolving, approximately $18,000. The first request on the scoreboard, which I did not read, $23,295. The third request is to do some work in the bathrooms in OMS, the petitions, the mirrors, and the soap dispensers. The estimate for that is $25,000, and we have a FREC revolving account that can only be used for maintenance/repairs. So we have enough in that account to fund that particular project and not wait or not move that forward as a capital request to the town. The bottom 2 on this list that Justin has identified as potentially being able to fund out of the revolving is the sign that we have talked about, the Oxford Public Schools LED sign that would replace the one that is currently at this entrance. That cost would be partially, of $22,000, would be partially offset through the student activity donations. I believe there are at least 2 classes who have asked or requested that their monies be used to help offset that. I am not sure on the exact amount. I'm going to estimate that it might have been $9,000 or $10,000 that toward that, and the rest would be funded then out of the building rentals revolving he is recommending. And then another request that I think many of you are familiar with is the bathroom countertop issue that we have at Chafee, which is pretty serious. We can also fund that through the FREC revolving, and that's approximate cost of $40,000. So those are ones that we know that based on the revolving accounts, should the committee wish to vote, we could fund all of those. Many of those are projects that have some lead time, others not. So.
Thank you. Just a couple, I know I have a couple comments on committee, then I'll give my comments. Yes.
I was just gonna say, I thought the issue wasn't just at Chafee, I thought it was at Barton as well with our bathroom countertops.
I
mean,
We were at that.
I did do a walkthrough and I took photographs myself, so I'm kinda surprised to just see Chafee here and not Barton as well. Their bathrooms are almost identical.
And I remember Barton's being worse on our walkthrough, if I recall.
I think, yeah, I don't know, so it could very well be, given the fact that both were probably renovated at a similar time.
Yeah.
I think it had something to do with the moisture that we had at Chafee that was emanating the smell. So I don't know if that, we had the same issue. I really,
I believe when we did the walkthrough with the Building Safety Committee, what Mrs. Griffin is referring to is seams that got water in them that are then split. And that is definitely an issue at Barton because with a student there the year we did the walkthrough, I definitely took notice. So I would say both schools, you're correct.
The laminate is.
Yeah, right.
This evening, just so in terms of procedure, I'll be asking for 2 votes. One to fund it, and the second will be priority. So we're just talking about funding of these issues right now. And I have a couple of issues too with these, but very good point on that right there, and we'll have to get more clarification. On the football field, on the school board, and reading the quotes and all the extra information that came with that, it was my understanding that it was held off last year, the dedication of the football field to Commander Maisley. I didn't see anything on that scoreboard that would be the proper recognition to the man that if we're going to dedicate the field. So I don't know if there was miscommunication, if things have changed. I know that was a wish. I think the family was putting together maybe some matching funds or some sort of funding for the project as well too. So I think both sides really have to talk on that one before we go forward. Because we get a basic scoreboard, but if you're dedicating the field to a man that's done so much, which so many people have, but if that was the issue, was to dedicate that field, it should be on the scoreboard. And the second one is the LED. It seems to me, and I'll ask the board a question. Can anyone else, are there any other LED signs in Oxford? No, there's a bylaw against it. It's a planning board ordinance. And so I think we might have to go for a special permit.
Yeah, we did check into that, I believe. You're correct, but I think schools district is exempt, because we did have that issue, and we asked that this was kind of being brought forward for discussion by the assistant principal at the high school, who was generating it based on students coming forward to him. And so we had him meet with,
It was the building inspector and the planning board.
yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
so it is exempt.
Yes, because he also had discussions with Sean Duval about the footage that were needed out here. So I think we have their blessing that we're good for that piece. Yeah.
Good, okay.
Right,
Okay, 'cause I know-
but you're exactly right, we needed to go to them, and that's what I sent him
You
to
have done
say.
that. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, yes,
One question on that sign. So this says the Oxford Public Schools sign. So I guess my mentality says the Oxford Public Schools is actually over in the OCC building, and this is actually the Oxford High School / Oxford Middle School out front. So what will that sign say?
I believe it was going to say Oxford Public Schools, so that you could run any type of events in your entire school community, post that on that. So whether it's something hey, heads up, we've got the father-daughter dinner or something at Barton going on, so it'd be for everybody to see as they drive by.
And the 2 signs that are out there now would stay, or
I believe not. The major sign that would be taken down. I'm not sure about the other sign. I'm trying to remember the other one.
So in front of the middle school,
I
there's
drive by it, but I just.
in front of the middle school, there's a sign that she puts the letters up, like what they have
Okay.
at Chafee, and here in front of the
I
high
hear what
school,
you're
there is
saying,
a
And this one
stable.
was.
Right.
I don't
Bigger.
see. I think the one sign that's there at the end, because I think their intent was to replace the sign that actually is for the high
The
school.
high school driveway.
Yes. Yeah. It's my understanding as far as placement goes. That
so it would be on this property then?
it would be on our town property. Yes.
The property of this?
Right, I believe it
The
was
high
going
school.
to just replace where that current sign is, but, I can't tell you that that's 100%, but it's not going over where the middle school sign is at this point.
It's not going down on Maple Street?
No, oh, no, no, because.
Because if you read it for
No.
Oxford Public Schools,
Yeah,
that's our
right,
building,
no.
yes.
Right,
No.
and that's where I feel like
Yeah.
the confusion comes in for people who are new to town, who are looking for the school department. They see that sign, they come down here, oh no, this is the high school.
Yeah.
We have 4 schools in the town, and I feel
Right.
like it's a little misleading to be the Oxford Public Schools sign.
Usually that says administrative offices underneath it in small print somewhere. Oxford Public Schools, administrative offices
That
or
wasn't there
something.
for a long time.
Yeah. So
But
that's-
just while you're talking about the sign, it's coming from high school funds though, correct?
Part of it is donations from I think it's 2 classes, Dave,
Right.
who have donated, had specifically, I guess,
Class of 19
indicated that.
Class of 19, a class of Taylor's class, 18, 17, 18,
Yeah.
18 and 20.
So it's coming from high school classes.
Part
and
of it,
then-
the
Right,
funding,
but
yeah.
then building rentals, I'm assuming high
Yes.
school.
Mm-hmm.
Middle
then-
school.
Why wouldn't it be a high school sign? Or a high school campus, like Oxford High School, middle school, and have it just be one campus sign?
It could very well be. I mean, you can put
Yeah.
whatever
Oh,
you
just-
want on that,
September brings a good point up, you
Yeah.
don't wanna, this isn't the Oxford Public School office down here.
Right.
Unless you guys are moving.
Yeah.
then-
Right, right.
I think when you use it just as high school, then you're just promoting high school events, if you will, because it says Oxford High School. So, it's a matter of, do you want to use it to promote school-wide, or do you want to use it just to promote high school? High schools have them, middle schools have them. Any new school that gets built usually has one, even elementary schools. We all, it's part of your building project generally. So it's really a matter of choice. What types of events are you going to particularly want to sponsor? And therefore that might dictate what the name is that you want on the top.
Okay.
I think we can determine
Yeah.
later, but it's a great
Yeah.
location for all school
Sure.
information, really.
Okay, so moving on, so we ready to vote on funding for all five projects?
Can I just ask real quick?
Of course,
I might
of
have
course.
missed this and I
Yeah.
apologize. How are these prioritized?
These are not, these
We're not-
5 are
No,
not.
how
That's
did
the
you
second-
guys prioritize them? How did you bring them to us?
I did not. Justin looked at potential revolving accounts that would fit what the project was that we could legally use to fund. And, the ones on the top have already been crossed out, you've done. So as we go through, I think you also looked at the monies that we have available. So anything that was, obviously substantial, he may have said, we can't afford to do that. So I think it's was a combination of the amount of money that he had available, and could the project be done with those funds that we could earmark out of the revolving account.
Yeah, 'cause the only thing that jumps out at me, the number's huge, but I'm just wondering why the bleachers at OHS have been on there for 5 years. And is it a safety thing? Is it just cosmetics? Like,
I asked that
and
question.
that's a huge number, so I
Yes, it
understand
is.
why it's not coming forward.
Yeah, probably because it's more of I think a capital for the town. I asked Justin whether it was a safety issue. He said no. I know when we did the bleachers at Apponequet, it was because of the way the bleachers were designed. There wasn't that backstop. And so we had to have someone, come in and do that. But the bleachers were also used for graduation every year, because they had outside graduation. So that was the overarching concern. But I think part of it probably, Dave, was that number was so high
Yeah,
that
that's
it would
what
be
I-
more of a capital.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah, I think.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, entertain a motion to approve the funding for the 5 projects as listed, highlighted in yellow.
I'll make that motion.
Motion to have a second.
A second.
Moved in second, further discussion. Al?
I just would like to see clarification if Barton is part of the bathroom countertops, I think.
That is not for that price, I can tell you that. 'Cause it was pretty costly to do that, so it is not part of that. If you want us to try to revisit it, it would probably have to be, separate. I don't know what else, how much else is left in FREC. That can only be used for maintenance. So again, not having Justin here to know, what that gives us. I think there were 2 projects, 25 and 40. So you're about 65. We can check and find out. I don't know if we have a cost estimate on the bathrooms at Barton.
And then one other thing that came to mind is the electronic door access. We did get that accomplished at OMS, but not at our other schools. I don't know if it got to happen at the high school either. So I would think that would be a priority for the safety of our buildings.
So I think you have, I'm sorry, it's so smart. You have the electronic door access at Barton and Chafee. So I'm assuming that you have done the high school and the middle school. And that's at the bottom half of your list below that second two highlighted, you'll see that there are a lot of safety, health, and structural that combine, that were scheduled to be done in 22, FY 22, next year's budget. So that was on your list initially to be done in FY 22. And the funding would not be able to come out, well, you potentially could look at funding those out of FREC as opposed to doing the bathroom countertops at Chafee or the soap dispensers and mirrors at OMS.
Yeah, I think our bathrooms are a top priority, but I also think safety is a top priority.
I don't think any of us disagree, but it's a matter of, identifying a funding mechanism for it. So if you want to swap those out.
Not particularly.
So I think they must have been, I'm assuming that when you received your capital list last year, that this was on the list in this order. So you had done 2 and you were going to do 2 the following year.
I don't really think it was as refined as this,
Okay.
per my recollection. I think that this has been fine-tuned and I greatly appreciate it, but I don't think it was scheduled like this, if I remember, right before our FinCom meeting. And I don't know if anybody else
Yes,
was
it's
present.
I'd like to withdraw the motion. You withdraw your,
I can withdraw.
withdraw the motion from the second? Okay. Let's get back, when Justin's back with us. I think this is probably doing what, September?
We need to submit it to them by the end of this month, I believe. That's why it came to you. In other words, this vote on the yellow, if you feel that we've identified funding mechanisms, that can be set aside. Prioritizing and looking at what is on the list below the second 2 yellow, all of those projects, any of those that you would want to bring forward as capital requests, you should look at this evening and prioritize. All the ones that are crossed out, but anything that is not crossed out that you feel is a health, safety, priority or a structural priority, most of those are listed in the second tier at the very bottom, after that second bar of yellow highlighted. The ones that appear at the top below the 3 highlighted primarily are a little bit more cosmetic and or may not pose either a structural, health, or safety risk. Something that we would want to do, but potentially, and that's how I think he organized these.
Right, where Justin couldn't be with us this evening, I realize that they're
Yep.
due, but as a chairman, I'm gonna have to take the hit, and we're
Okay.
gonna be tardy on this.
Okay.
That we just don't have the information. I think Mrs. Griffin brings up great information, with the pictures of both Chafee and Barton, why aren't those together? And I don't think we can adequately answer that.
Point of clarification,
Yep, go
sorry,
ahead.
Chair. Did I hear you say correctly, Dr. Nash, that we could vote on the dollar figure and then the priority later?
I was looking for potentially 2 votes. The ones that are in yellow could come out of your different revolving accounts that we've identified. Given the fact that each department is asked to bring forward capital lists to the town, if you would want to prioritize any of the others as capital that you would put forward to the town, then you could do that. So 2 separate votes. One for capital bringing forward to town, the other potentially for you to vote that we could do internally based on the revolving funds that we have. So yes, 2 votes.
So, but the first vote would be to approve the ones you have in yellow,
Yes.
not just the dollar figure.
Right, exactly.
And I think I agree with the chair, I think we need Justin, because after last year's capital presentation, which needed some work, I think he's got a much better plan now, and I don't know what is in his plan off the top of my head right now. Like, I don't know what the phases are. So,
Yeah, I think that's important to have the man that wrote the plan and his vision in going forward with this. Okay. All right, we will hold that to the next meeting. Please, in the interim, forward your questions into Justin on that for points of clarification, so we can come back better prepared, and he can prepare what the committee's wishes are. All right. Okay, I'm gonna pass the gavel for a second. I'm gonna take a quick recess myself, but Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Nash, your report back.
Sure.
Dave, start up there.
Okay. So I'd like to update the committee this evening on our fall reopening plan, and in particular, would like to explain to the committee and also to those who are watching how things have begun to morph a little bit as a result of the reentry information request form that went out to all of our parents. So this last week, we sent out to all parents a request for information that really asked them to select a model that we had put out as part of our fall reentry plan that the school committee had approved. So to select either hybrid or virtual learning academy as we had defined it. As a result of that, we had over 1,579 responses. So we really had, in a very short period of time, all of our parents responding. And I'll share with you some of the information, but the information that really has driven us to morph the Virtual Learning Academy into something different really was based on the fact that we are looking at approximately 24% of our students who are not returning to school for hybrid. That breaks out to roughly 370 students. The numbers were spread across K-12. And based on that information, it caused us to look at staffing now differently, because if you're not having students in front of you for hybrid, you now can use your staff differently. So that was, as we were working, as all of you are probably working on your cohort groups, that quickly changed. And at our meeting last week, I had preliminary information for them on Tuesday. On Wednesday, because it closed for parents on Tuesday to respond. And by the time Friday came, we were working on a very different plan. And so what I'm proposing this evening is that Virtual Learning Academy, as we know it, with a supervisor, with more directed, using a learning platform, will now morph into, at K-8, a teacher teaching students. So, but let me go over that a little bit and what that looks like. So when we looked at our numbers at K-1 for those students who were not returning, it was enough for us to recognize that we could pull a K teacher and a 1 teacher and have that teacher be a full-time remote teacher based on those numbers. When we looked at 2, 3, and 4, it seemed to be the one school where we saw a large jump in parents not sending their students back. So we saw numbers that ranged anywhere from 27 in a grade upwards to 33. So it did not, at this point in time, make sense for us to simply pull 1 teacher at each grade. To have 1 teacher try to teach 27 students remotely in grades 2, 3, or 4, to me anyway, and to I think in talking with the building principal and thinking about what that entails, did not make sense. So we would be adding 3 teachers. Now remember, I had initially talked to you about having a virtual learning supervisor at each level. So we talked really about putting 4 in the budget, meaning taking out of our ESSER/CARES money. So 3 of those would need to be added at this point in time at the elementary level. And the reason that I suggest that to you is that we know that some parents made decisions on hybrid and virtual learning, based on the information at that time. And now there are going to be some parents who are going to look and say, the reason that I selected hybrid was because I wanted my child to have a teacher in front of him or her. And now they may say, wait a minute, I could have selected this. So tomorrow, I have, initially, I already have written a letter going out to all of our parents to say, here's what's happened. While this information is primarily informational, to let all of those who selected Virtual Learning Academy to know that it's now going to change. I also want those parents who selected hybrid to have that opportunity to reconsider. So that's one of the reasons why in staffing, we kind of needed to look to say, we're probably going to have some others who are going to let us know that they're going to move into that. Again, case by case. We also needed to go out and call this week a lot of parents, because we had a lot of parents at all grade levels who didn't pick one or the other. So a lot of time was spent this week, and it's actually still happening. Parents are being called if you did not select either model. So again, in that letter, it will say to parents, to all our parents, we're going to assume this if you don't tell us differently. When we looked at the middle school, we saw that our numbers again were pretty much on line with what we were seeing in our other schools, running somewhere between 20 to 25, sometimes 27 in a grade who were not returning. Now the middle school model, as you know, is a little different because they deliver content. So with grade 7, because our teachers in grade 7 pick up an additional class that they teach, the principal, in looking at staffing, felt that she could cover it by assigning a teacher. But she could not do that when I spoke with her actually over the weekend at grades 5 and 6. So we would have to hire, what we're asking is for 5 remote learning teachers. We had 4 planned for the budget with respect to our CARES and ESSER money, but I believe based on my discussions with Justin last week when I was asking that, because we have not dipped into that money yet for anything. We've only put it in as our initial proposal, but we haven't hired anybody yet. And based on the fact that you have downsized the number of health and safety monitors, that we could hire 5 teachers to cover the additional numbers that we have. At the high school level, it works a little differently because it's cost-driven. And I've talked with Mr. Nugent, and we believe that based on the fact that our teachers at the high school are now teaching 6 classes and not 5, that he can assign a remote learning teacher per major content areas. So grade 9, English, grade 10 English, grade 11, grade 12, grade 8 could have a teacher teaching. And it would be a matter of ensuring the schedule worked. So if you're trying to kind of think about that schedule, you would like to say students on Orange Day have periods 1 and 2 taught live by a teacher, English teacher, math teacher. On Black Day, they have their science and history. Maybe it's at the end of the day, but it's back to back. And then they would take their electives online using Edgenuity and would elect. So half of their day is live, half of it is, if you will, remote through electives for those who are. There's no way that we can run 8, and because they're, in many cases, they're elective courses that students are taking, and you just don't have the staff to do that. But he believes he can do it by freeing up a teacher, being a remote teacher for a particular content area, whereas it's a little bit easier to do certainly at the elementary. It's really numbers. We also anticipate that the unknown for us is how many are going to, at this point, jump and go to that. We really don't know. But as that happens, then it could be that we need 1 less teacher teaching hybrid, teaching live, if you will. So, I think this is again, when you create a proposal, it's the unknown. Many districts started this way and then crossed their fingers that 2 things could happen. 1, that they would have staff to meet it, or 2, that they would be able to, negotiate something that would work. Obviously, we didn't expect almost 24% of people not returning. It's an unknown. We now know it, and I think you have to amend your plan accordingly. So that would be my recommendation going forward, that Virtual Learning Academy as we know it disappears, and it gets replaced by hiring remote learning teachers, probably at this point 5, that we need based on those grades that I indicated, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then obviously taking teachers internally also to become remote learning teachers. And then at the high school, what I call a partial model, so. I'll stop there and
Thank you,
for
Mr.
questions.
Dr. Nash, just in your discussion of unknowns,
Mm.
did that include the commissioner's guidance on Friday about staff members or folks who are teachers who have children in the district being
So-
allowed to come here full-time?
Well, there were 2 points of guidance from the commissioner. One was, you already allow, based on the contract, your teachers to attend and bring their children. So you already do that. So the question for them is how many, and then they would then be here full-time, if you will, instead of remote on week, off week. They would be able to come and bring their children for, both weeks when we move into hybrid. So the answer is yes,
So- The way I understood the guidance, it was, and I'll use Pal as an example here, someone who teaches, whether they teach in Oxford or not, her children come to Oxford schools, should then be allowed to come to school.
it's their residence.
Full-time.
It's where they live.
Yep.
And the school district, whatever they run, allowing them to stay full-time. So in this case, if you live in Oxford, but you teach somewhere else, your child could come here and do hybrid both weeks and be full-time in person, yeah.
So that's the
Yes,
answer to my
yes.
question. So
Saying,
yes,
saying the same thing, probably.
I think we are, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So Kimberly and I actually had a discussion today after our personnel and staff meeting around the number of teachers that it might impact and where it might impact. What grades, if we were to do that, where would we see the impact of the numbers?
Do we have a sense of how many of our parents are teachers in other districts?
Where did I have that information somewhere? I think we have 7 Oxford Public School staff whose students attend this district.
Yeah.
3 at the elementary, 3 at the middle, and 1 at the high school. So obviously, when we went to hybrid, they would have that opportunity to keep their child here for a week on, week off, full time. Out of district, that has more to do with the feasibility of allowing them to bring their children to school while they are teaching remote, if you're doing remote learning. So that's the other piece of what the commissioner has said. When feasible, can a district provide opportunities when you're doing remote and you are requiring your staff to be in their buildings to bring their children with them. So I know that we have somewhere around 17 to 25 who
Somewhere in that range.
have some type of childcare need, whether that,
Of your staff?
of our staff in the district of teaching staff, not IA staff or,
Correct, but I'm asking about teachers like Pal who teach somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Her children, according to what I've read that guidance
No,
to be,
that's-
should be able to
Yeah.
come here.
That actually is,
The district I work in.
yes, the district she works in.
Your children should go to your district.
Her district.
Yeah,
That's how I read that.
yeah, I think it's a little confusing,
It's very-
yeah,
They would be in her class.
Right.
so.
in my room necessarily, there'd be somewhere else for them.
Yeah, because the twofold is, if she's a resident right now in this district, this may conflict with, obviously be different of what's
Right.
happening for her work schedule. Yeah. So they're saying, the district that you work in, do they have some flexibility to allow you to do something a little differently?
A couple of questions. Dr. Nash, the Tuesday deadline, I'll just admit, I didn't make it, and I made it to Wednesday deadline.
You were
and
counted.
It,
Yes.
okay, I'm just saying,
Yep.
so it did get accepted, I'm sure there was
Yeah.
others maybe who were
We
tardy
were
with
updating
so-
it, I mean,
Okay.
they got their sheets, and we're gonna have to go back again.
Well, that's what I'm just saying,
No
it
question.
didn't close
Yeah.
down, so people could have.
I don't
did it
think
on
so,
Wednesday.
Dave, because I printed this out this afternoon at 15:79. When I printed out the other day, it was at 14:22. So I think it kept
Well,
generating.
that's what I mean, so,
Yep.
but it's closed now, right? So people aren't continuing?
No, it's still open.
All right,
But I printed this out this afternoon at like 4:45.
okay.
Yeah.
So a couple quick things. So I thought I heard you say that you could pull from K and 1, you can pull one teacher
For each
for
grade.
each grade.
Yep.
So you would have one K, one first grade teacher to do the remote
Yes.
learning for those two grades.
Even though our numbers are small, we anticipate that those numbers could grow.
Okay.
They're probably the smallest numbers right now for remote.
Okay. So then I heard you say in grades 2, 3, and 4, it's a big jump of people not sending back.
Yes,
I heard you say 3 additional through the grant,
yes.
but I didn't hear you talk about.
3 we would also pull, so we're looking
So we have-
at 2 remote per grade.
2 remote per.
One that we would have to hire, one that we could pull right now based on the numbers.
So 3 we would pull and then 3 we would add.
Yes, yep.
Okay. And then did I hear you say for 5, 6, and 7?
We
7
can,
you'd be able to pull 1.
7 we can manage because teachers at grade 7 are assigned an extra period, so she feels that she can pull an English teacher and assign a remote based on you're the English teacher remote for grade 7, you're the math teacher remote, that way.
Right.
5 and 6 she can't because of the teacher teams and the numbers. So we would have to hire 2 teachers. They would be generalist as opposed to specific. So they hold K-6 certification, thus they can teach all the content areas. I'm a little worried about that. That's the one that I may have to come back because the numbers are a little bit high and I don't know what's gonna happen. It's the one area where I don't have a lot of wiggle room if our hybrid parents jump to
So
this.
I did
Yeah.
hear you say 3 additional. You just said 2.
2, 1 for 5, 1 for
Okay,
6.
I
Yep.
just originally,
Yep.
my notes were 3,
Okay.
that's fine. And then for the high school,
Right,
8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So if I heard this correctly, there's going to be 1 content teacher per grade. So you would.
but not 1 per grade, so a grade 8 English teacher, a grade 9 English teacher, a grade 10, a grade 11, grade 12, not multi-age or multi-grade.
So that's
so-
5 different staff
Fi-
members?
5 members, could be the same person teaching too, because in their schedule, they may already teach grade 8 and
Yep,
grade 9
yep, that's
English,
fine.
yep.
Okay,
Same thing, then for math, we'll have to do an algebra teacher, you know, the major areas, a geometry teacher, an algebra 1 teacher. They'll have to pick the areas that we know kids need to take over those years. Same thing in history, same thing in science, but I'm sure probably biology, physics, chemistry, something like that.
so he's able to,
He is because our teachers are moving to teaching 6. They
Correct.
currently teach 5, so you now have that extra period, plus you know that you're only getting back 200 students divided by 5 grades, you got 40 per grade. And when we talked about it, he said it's doable. The hardest part is the schedule, to try to figure out how to schedule that. Yeah, so, because,
okay.
yeah.
So
Ideal,
he's good up there then. So-
he indicated he could do that. Ideally, you'd like to do, you know, not do all their, ideally, you'd like to have half a day, live, remote. It may end up being a full day live, a full day remote. I just don't know how that's scheduled because they're in 8 classes, students.
How does that work with foreign language, with foreign language and phys ed?
So, for students, so they can do the remote students can take through Edgenuity foreign language.
Okay.
Yeah, there's thousands of classes. And I believe there's a health wellness, so we're gonna have to look at that as the means of them doing their requirement for PE. We're gonna have to be adaptable in that. You just can't. You're not gonna have a full PE class as you know it. I don't believe they offer that online. Yeah.
And how is guidance going to check student credits? So I don't want to see, come back in June, someone missing a
Yep.
health and phys ed. It's a school, and asking the school committee to waive that requirement when ingenuity, or however it's going to be done.
So the
Has to check
schedule should be done, so someone who elects or to do remote, a student is in 8 classes. You know that in any given year, there are requirements. Those requirements generally are 4 years of English, 4 years of history, 4 years of math, 3 years of history, 3 years of science, dependent, and 2 years of usually a foreign language, and I think that's starting with a class that's coming in, and there's usually fine arts. So they're going to have to make sure that when they look at their schedule, just as they typically do, that someone is double checking initially in the fall to say, okay, those 8 here are your 4 core content, your 4 electives match up to what you should be taking. It's the same thing you do when a kid right now signs up. They're going to have to double check that.
But when they go to
Yeah.
remote,
We're going to have to make sure that the guidance counselor has looked at that student who's remote, has matched it up to make sure that the courses they're taking as electives are courses that would be appropriate for them at that grade level. There has to be someone looking at that, and that has to be their guidance counselor to do that.
Okay.
They know. So they're the ones that have to look at that. Initially, right now, kids have signed up, remember, at the high school for 7 classes because they thought they had a 7-period day, and they have to list all those additional electives. Now it's 8, and guess what? You may be getting something that you don't particularly like, but that's the reality of life. I know you're over there cringing, September, but the good news is you only have 4 classes a day.
I'm not cringing, I was actually chuckling to myself.
Okay.
Not cringing. I thought about that.
Yeah,
and
right.
that's
So,
gonna
but that
throw a
is
wrench
the
for
reality
them.
every year in high school.
Right.
You know, they always get classes. They say, "Why am I in that class? I don't want that." Well, it was my 3rd choice, and we aren't running the first 2. But the good question, we've got to make sure that we check that. Yeah. There will be some areas that I think, a PE requirement you probably can't meet. You're going to have to do a health, wellness, nutrition class or something like that and count that. It depends on the grade level of the student because they have 5 years, if you will, or 4 years to complete some of these requirements. So if they're a freshman, they still have ample opportunity to take, a PE class, hopefully when we come back a year from now, in a different manner.
so in those, so you're looking for 6 spots, right?
5 right now.
5 right now.
3 at the Barton, 2 at middle school. My question mark still is, what's going to happen with middle if those numbers change? And I'm pretty comfortable that at Barton, because at this point we only have 27, even if we half that, it's 15. And if I get more than 10, we can still handle 20, in each class. It's getting up to the 25 and up that you don't want at remote. I'd like to keep them, at the most around 20 if I could.
And just looking for, is this job description, is the virtual?
That job
learning
description is gone. We no
That's
longer
gone.
need for you to approve that.
Okay.
That was in prior to, when we were doing the packet.
Okay.
This is, the most recent. I have been talking with parents, so those who have called me recently, as of this last week, I've kind of said this could be morphing. I think they recognize that I've said that quite a bit. And I really think that parents will be happy that we're able to provide a teacher. I think this is obviously the model that you always want, but the reality is we didn't know starting out, and we have to present something to people so they can at least make an informed choice then, and now it's morphing. So I have a pretty lengthy letter that's going out to them tomorrow. The deadline for our parents to respond, we need to get this back, so the only ones that really have to respond are the hybrid parents out there. When you get this letter tomorrow, if you're already selected Virtual Learning Academy, we're just telling you that you now have a teacher at K-8. And if you are thinking about changing, they're the ones who are hybrid who need to let us know, hopefully no later than Friday, because everyone has to redo all these cohorts now again for the 3rd time.
So now to be clear, my child, if proverbially was still in Oxford High School, she graduates. She signs up, she's gonna go all online. So she's gonna have a math teacher, she's gonna have an English teacher.
She'll have 4 teachers,
She'll have 4 teachers.
live teachers teaching those 4
Right.
content areas.
Who is her go-to person if she has a problem with ingenuity? She has a problem, social, emotional, so somewhere else around there.
Guidance and adjustment. Guidance for any problems that she has with Edgenuity. They have been the ones who've been working with students who've been taking Edgenuity in the past, it's my
Yeah.
understanding. And then, of course, the 1.5 adjustment counselors that we now have at the high school, they would go to them with some of the issues around any social, emotional, which they would anyway.
And what is the turnaround time that the student can expect to hear back when they're virtual if they have a question? Because I know there's been problems in the past. The communication has been horrible out of that office.
Out of the guidance office?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that some were good, others say that they called back and they never called back. So, and we saw it in the surveys. The communication from the high school was a major, major issue. So where do they go when they're stuck in this ingenuity class and they're sitting by themselves? They don't know what to do. And they send an email and they don't get an email back to maybe 48 hours later.
So there are two things. If it's a technical issue, it would probably be directed to the help desk or to Cadian. If it's just that type of an issue. If it's an issue about a course that they're taking, specifically about why am I taking this course, then that would be more to their guidance counselor, who would be ensuring that is appropriate for them.
So I guess, okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I guess with any teacher, they have a classroom management plan.
Mm-hmm.
Will guidance be putting together a management plan for students in ingenuity or students at home in terms of contacting, maybe good for the school adjustment counselor? To put something together so the students know who to call. And that's what I think parents, a lot of the parent frustration is when they email the principal and it may go somewhere else, and maybe 3 or 4 days later when the child has an assignment that's due in an hour.
Right.
And they're stuck.
Yeah.
Okay. So we looked at some clarification. And I think that goes back to Dave, what remote learning is really going to look like. And I think we get a little better picture. And it sounds
Well,
great
it has
until something happens.
Let's hope that it doesn't change again.
September, go ahead.
But
I'm sorry, just a point of clarification. Dr. Nash, you just spoke for the parents at home and stated that students K through 8 would have a grade level teacher. That's
And-
actually K through 7.
Oh, I'm
Because
sorry, I keep
8
thinking, yes.
I
K
just-
through 7 have a full-time, all-day teacher, thank you. 8 through 12 will have part of that day, based on, it could very well be that it could be more than 4 periods, but at minimum, it's 4 right now.
Other questions for Dr. Nash?
Just one other thing I would like to point out. Still stuck on the health and safety monitor reduction over here. We talked about maybe needing to hire an additional teacher, and I think you had mentioned that we could potentially, if we cut from the 22 to the 16 monitors, we could potentially take some
Well, it
of
frees
that.
up some of that money.
However,
Yeah.
I think we left that open if we need those additional 6. So I'm leery of spending the money, or at least to be conscientious of spending that money if in fact we do find that the 16 are not sufficient.
Sure.
Just wanted to put that out there for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Nash, we're good on that. Thank you for the
I am.
update. Next one we have, Dr. Nash has requested additional stipends for the work done over the summer, which was out of the scope of the contract of 3 assistant principals and the head nurse.
So as you know, those of you who've obviously been around the buildings know that the assistant principals work 184 days plus 26. And I think all 3 of them, both at our elementary, middle, and high school, have been in the buildings almost the entire summer. As many of you probably recognize in the same capacity. 10 days is really just a number in that I know that it's been more than 10 days, but in trying to look at what might make sense based on a funding mechanism or a funding source, 10 days at least is a way to recognize the work, all the additional time that they've put in. I have certainly know that the head nurse has been with us at every single meeting that I've requested. Just so that you know, her stipend is for a head nurse part of the school year. It doesn't extend to any time beyond the school year, and she has made herself available. Will be leading next week's presentations on health and safety. So I've indicated to you the per diem for 10 days for each of those individuals, and also a funding mechanism, which is the out of the general fund in your budget. We have a teaching assistant position that we no longer need this year. So you have the ability to pay that. So I would ask that you would consider that for these individuals.
Okay. Entertain a motion to to approve the amount of $16,685.96 to be paid as per diem calculations to assistant principals and the head nurse.
Make that motion.
A second.
Moved in second, further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? There being none, 5 in the affirmative, passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that it for me.
That's it for you.
Okay, that's it for me.
Okay. Mrs. Griffin, do you have a report for us this evening as a signer?
So I have a warrant report. And so the warrant types are what, there's an account payables warrant from August 11th for $12,577.55 that I've signed. An accounts payable warrant from August 18th for $24,413.19 that I've signed. A payroll warrant from August 20th for $92,805.18 I've signed. And then tomorrow I will be signing the accounts payable warrant from August 25th for $103,939.72.
Thank you, Pat. Now, I do have a question.
Yep.
You sent it across in your email, and I didn't want to deliberate over the email, but you questioned in the warrants about the electric bill.
I did.
Did you get an answer back on that?
I did get an answer response from Nada Lepore, and it was stated that like that's our share of the cost because of the solar credits and like kind of what we're supposed to kind of pick up as the town has for us. But it seemed like a substantial amount of electricity that we were paying for, and maybe I'm not understanding it fully. But from what I'm to understand, that we pay for the lights, you know, in front of the schools and different places, and the cost of that electricity is charged to us. And what I questioned was the fact that our school buildings weren't open. We weren't really using a lot of electricity, but yet we were still spending a lot on electricity. And it just seemed like a very large amount to me, considering those factors. But I guess that's our lot as far as the town has assigned it to us. But it didn't sit well with me.
Has the rate increased? Because I know personally, and people I've spoken to at the grocery store, like it used to be, but still here and there, people like electric bills have gone sky high.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if other people seeing that. I saw that. I'm like, okay.
It seemed high to me, and I'm trying to understand the credits and like how it works out. And,
Yeah.
It's
But
one
thank
of
you
those
for bringing
things
that
that I
forward.
really don't understand. Like I need Justin to probably come in and give me a
That's my next suggestion. Is next meeting.
response.
At the next meeting, could we talk about the electricity? Because we are on town's plan. Maybe it's time to look somewhere else. If have Justin's recommendation, look into it on what's going on with our not our kilowatt usage. I think it's the delivery charge.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's what's gone up.
Right.
Our kilowatt usage is probably gone down.
But the yes.
But the delivery charge,
is
I think, has gone up considerably.
Yes.
And so maybe, if we're in the town's program, maybe it's time to look and see if we can negotiate a better rate. Maybe does FRAC do that? I don't, French River, you never know.
No.
But we could
Sign
look.
up with my home too.
It's tied into our home bills, right? Okay, thank you for that, pal.
Thank you.
Member request, Mr. Pinocchio, you be first tonight.
I thought about this at the last hour, so I'm assuming we're probably gonna have to get it on our next, agenda, but the discussion regarding athletics. I know that has to go
Yeah.
through school committee.
We have, I have a meeting actually this week with Kevin May and the high school principal around athletics. September 1st, the modifications are coming out with potentially for the sports that you can run. So we're gonna look at those to see, or at least I'll have an understanding from Kevin this week of what he understands to be the modifications for the sports that we can run. So, and then we'll have that discussion. We can put that on for a topic.
Yeah, I think we have, because I believe it needs the school committee approval to move forward with it, if I read that correctly. So I just want to at least get it on the next item. I don't think I really have anything else tonight, Chair. I do want to thank Dr. Nash. I know she gets it from me and gets it from probably the other board members and within the community and, within the school department. And, I just want to thank you. It's a daunting task. I know I have it at a little bit minimal level to where you have it, and it's daunting for me. I can't even imagine at your level. So I just want to thank you for taking the phone calls, taking the emails, dealing with just something we've never been through. And it's just ever changing, and I'm sure there's days you're driving home saying, why the heck am I driving out here? Let me just keep driving. So I just thank you so much for everything you're doing. Know that even though, maybe you and I don't always see eye to eye on some of what we've been doing, I think we have the best interest of kids, and I can't thank you enough. You're doing a great job, so thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Burke.
I echo Dave's comments. Everything we did.
Okay, Mrs. Griffin.
My only concern is the lunch timing, and I think you have like 20/20 vision a lot, and a lot of you're thinking of things before I'm thinking of things, Dr. Nash, and I think you've got a wealth of experience. I just worry about the lunchtime, and I want kids to have an opportunity to wash their hands if they want to wash their hands. I don't want them to have to rely on hand sanitizers. I'm one of those parents where I've ingrained in my children since they were itty bitty. You go to recess, but you leave recess early because you're going to the bathroom and you're washing your hands before you eat. I don't want my kids to not have that opportunity. And that's one of those things that would be a deal breaker for me. I'll be very honest. If I knew that my kids couldn't wash their hands before they ate, I wouldn't feel comfortable sending them back.
I think one thing I know at the elementary school, correct me if we're wrong, I think we have sinks in every classroom, so it's
Right.
more so we have that ability. It's more making sure that, someone wipes the handles every time
Right.
someone has used that, so.
I envision the sink gets turned on.
Yeah, and you
and
just
it's
leave it
just a
on.
parade,
and
like,
and
you
I
know,
think
6
that's
feet
something,
apart, the
that's
water
something
runs a little
actually,
longer.
we had some discussion about. We were talking
The
about,
water
just
bill
let then
goes
the
up.
water bill goes up from Aquarian or wherever. But
Yeah.
so I think that that's something that, we're just gonna have to look at that and see how that can work out, given the fact that hopefully you're gonna have very small, numbers
Right.
potentially. So it could be something that easily at an elementary, you do.
Yeah, and I guess, like, as far as the lunchtime goes, kind of like what Mrs. Forbes said, as far as the monitors and everything, like, if we think that things need to be adjusted, I'm imagining we're gonna adjust on the fly, if, God forbid, need be.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll hear it
Yeah,
from them. Yeah.
so that's all, and thank you for all you're doing, and
Sure, we'll hear
same
it.
to all of our
Mrs.
teachers.
Schwartz.
So I will echo Dave's sentiments. I would want to be anyone on this planet except a school superintendent right now. I would also like to thank parents, staff, teachers, administration, not only for the flexibility, as this has just been this ever-changing roller coaster ride that we seem to be on, but patience. So many people want the answers now, and they just can't get that. I will ask for parents who have asked me when they will know their cohort groups, because they are trying to scramble. But again, that's where their patience
Yeah.
comes in.
Right.
And understanding and appreciating that, as you said, Dr. Nash, now that we may have higher numbers of students changing minds, et cetera, it may change a little bit again. So I do appreciate everybody being patient and flexible and everything we're expecting of everyone. And just Mrs. Griffin, to your case in point, when we were talking about the hand washing, there's a big difference between dirt after recess and germs before lunch. So, yeah, big difference. And that's all from me. Thank you, everybody. And thank you to the committee as well, because we've been not always agreeing on things and always having to figure it out. So I appreciate the healthy
Chair, real
banter.
quick, could I jump in on you? I apologize.
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Just
okay.
could we get an update too, maybe at next meeting from Justin regarding busing? Like, what's that looking like?
So he's waiting for cohort groups. And he's been-
But I mean, just
Yes.
with the
Everybody.
first couple of weeks of us not being in, how does that affect our contract? Where
Yes.
is there savings? Like,
Yeah.
just maybe an update on busing would be great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, do it right ahead. And opening a school for teachers is around the corner. As what I would request, especially with the longer PD days and that longer block, is that for all the principals to forward their agendas, what PD is going to look like. So that as committee members, we understand how our teachers are being retrained during this time. So an idea to the constituency, to our students, and even ourselves, we start looking at policy, is what's going on during this. How have our principals changed, and how are our principals supporting the teachers in the classroom to support each and every student? Because it's not like it was done last year. It's gonna be a big difference. Okay. And I'm sure we're up for the challenge. Thank you. That's all I have. Our next meeting is September 14th. Also on that agenda, I know Mr. Canacchioli requested the update for athletics. If it's possible, if we could have Mr. May at that meeting, because
Yes.
we are taking a vote. And athletics does start on the 15th or the 16th.
Yeah, one of these, yes.
Is it the 14th? No,
18th, I
No,
believe.
no, that's the 15th or 16th, or maybe the 18th.
Yeah, I think it's that week. I
Yeah,
think-
the
I
first
think
day of practice.
No sooner than the 18th of September.
That's when the first practice date is. It was the 14th, and they changed it again when the new guidelines came out. But if we are voting on that, which I'm not sure if we are voting, because we're a white community, not a yellow,
Right.
but they may change it that time. It may change though at that time. Okay, and our students are coming back in and blah, blah, blah. All right, we'll figure it out. When he comes in, we'll have him go the answers, make sure we,
There's public comment, Chair,
yeah.
before you close.
Oh.
Public comment.
Public comment, anything?
Nope, there are no questions coming in at this time.
Okay.
No questions? Thank you.
Mrs. Kelly asked me to pass along her regrets. She had a personal issue. She couldn't attend tonight, but she will plan to come at the next meeting on the 14th.
14th, very good. Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have executive session.
I'm sorry.
So you need to
Try to get out there.
I'll vote not to. You thought you were.
Withdraw that. Entertain a motion to go into executive session on MGL Chapter 38, Section 21A, subsection 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining as to an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and we will be returning only for the purposes of adjournment.
I'll make a motion.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Mrs. Forbes?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Canacchioli?
Yes.
And I vote yes, 5 in the affirmative. We are now in executive session, and we'll go somewhere else.